Hi, I'm Scott Sorrell with Balchem Corporation. I'm here with Walt Cooley from Progressive Dairy Magazine. Now, a few months ago, Balchem and Progressive Dairy Magazine got together to partner to create a new webinar series titled The Real Producer Exchange. And that's, Walt, we designed that to be specifically for real dairy producers, right? So kind of give us an overview of what we're trying to accomplish with that webinar series.
Yeah, so this is a new webinar series where we invite real producers. They're actively working on their own operations. They have real challenges, real opportunities, and we have them come onto the show to talk about some of those things, those challenges that they face, the opportunities that they're pursuing, and how they're learning to get more done on their operations more efficiently, more effectively. And along the way, sometimes we learn a few things they've learned not to do that maybe might be helpful to other producers.
Right. The emphasis there is on exchange, right? The exchange of experiences and information and best practices, worst practices, all those kinds of great things. Learning from each other. So we've already had one of these, Walt, and this one was with Clare Alderink. He's the manager of Ryzebol Dairy in Bailey, Michigan. So we've already had it. It's out there. Tell me some of the things that maybe the audience might have missed during that webinar.
Well, the beauty of this is it's been recorded, happens live. There is a Q&A session during each exchange. So when you tune in, you can ask the questions that are of interest to you after you hear what the producer has to say. So would encourage people to register for the next exchange. But the whole 1 hour long session with Claire is out there on YouTube. It's under the Real Producer Exchange YouTube channel. And you can watch the whole thing. We're going to try and recap just a few highlights from it today in our session together. So Claire's a great dairy producer who's managing a herd of about 3,000 cows and about 4,000 acres, and just a large herd producer who has a specific slant towards technology. That's one of the things we talked about in this last session. He uses quite a bit of technology. I'd say he's above average on the curve for technology use, and definitely not afraid to try some new things, which he talked about in that first webinar.
Yeah, one of the things that I really found interesting. So I'm a nutritionist by background, and he talked a lot about the use of high oleic soybeans, which is kind of gaining a lot of traction there in New York, and his experience with that, and actually success with that. And so I would invite people to kind of tune in to listen to that. I found that very interesting.
Another big thing we did last year, high oleic soybeans. This isn't really new technology. Some people would probably laugh, but it's been out there. Michigan State was doing a lot of research on it. And a couple of years ago, I'd heard of this. My nutritionist actually brought it up in conversation, and he doesn't bring up wild ideas normally unless it's something that, hey, there could be some merit there. So we went through the process of tracking down some people that would grow us enough beans to feed for a couple months so we could give this thing a shot and see if it would work. Because this whole thing started when soybean meal started creeping up towards $500, and I can't drive to the grocery store without passing 2,000 acres of soybeans. So I was starting to wonder, like, why am I always at the mercy of the world market here? I understand supply and demand and why those prices happen, but if I could find a way to buy those beans before they make it to the processor, I can probably save some money. So that's where this kind of started. It was like, how do I make it so I can feed those beans? Well, you can't feed them the regular beans, but we can feed them these high oleic soybeans with basically minimal processing. You still have to roast them, but and grind them. But we went that way. We tried it and it was successful. We saw a lot of energy corrected milk increase right away. And at that point, I decided, okay, this is going to be an ingredient that we need to figure out how to make the economics of this make sense so we can make it work. At first, there's premiums on these beans. There's roasting on these beans. We don't have storage. There's a lot of things that you have to figure out that it's going to take us a little bit of time before we make it streamlined and make it as cheap as all of the other feed ingredients. But I'm confident there's going to be enough support and enough guys, enough big operators messing around with this stuff that we'll be able to make it, a regular staple in most people's diets if it works. So yeah, buying the beans from my neighbors, being able to contract the beans, has already made it so we could reduce our cost on feed. Yes, compared to traditional soybean meal, it still costs more, but I'm not getting the same things from this that I'm getting from traditional soybean meal. It's not just a protein source. I'm getting energy here, and I'm not feeding any fat. So, and that's kind of another part of the idea. I can buy soybeans from the guy across the road. I have to buy palm fat from Malaysia. So, just looking at in terms of sustainability and long-term feed security, I think this was the way to go. And we just, we're kind of in the forefront of it, but it is effective. So we got past that part. Somebody had to step in and say, hey, let's see if this actually works. Well, it does. So now let's see if we can make it economically viable for all of us to use it, right?
And Claire, I think you
Any
said
questions?
you see maybe the model for this kind of like the corn silage model, where you're going to contract, you're going to go direct to somebody who's going to grow these for you.
Correct. Yes. So we buy corn silage standing in the field from the neighbors, and we get some benefit on pricing from that. And it's good for them too, because they don't have to harvest it and all these different things. If we can get it to that point where I'm not sure if we're harvesting them, but still, by taking out the elevator, we're making it so there's some room in there where because they have to make money too. The elevator obviously does. And this isn't against the elevators. This is just trying to look for any ways to make our largest expense, our feed, less. That's the biggest thing. We spend the most amount of money on. So it's always the thing we're going to be looking to save any amount of money on that we can. So this will make it, yes. For me so far, it's been good to get contracts. My neighbors are interested. We've had good buy-in around here. So I've been able to find enough beans and contract these beans to feed the cows here. So I think people will find when you get out there and you start looking at this that it's not as crazy and scary hard as it looks to get this done.
One of the things that I think is great about Clare and him being the first guest here on the show is just his philosophy. He's a great example of what we want to be portraying in these real producer exchange webinars, which is he's looking for opportunities for improvement, and he doesn't feel like he knows everything. He's the go-to expert on everything, all things related to dairy. And I really like this clip. He talked about his philosophy. Let's go to that and let the producers hear from themselves about Clare's philosophy and how he manages his dairy.
More than the numbers, I established our purpose. It starts by taking care of the cows and taking care of the people and really caring about the people and showing them that you care about them. And there's so many different ways, and it's hard to explain, but also being passionate about the cows with the people, and they can see how much we all care and how much we really want to do this. We focus on quality every day. Milk quality is one of our pillars. We talk about it all the time. It is our goal to put the cleanest milk in a bottle that exists. We don't always do it, but we're pretty close. So we try to maintain that. We do the best we can. We're always trying to improve. We can always make our somatic cell lower. There's always going to be somebody out there that's got better quality than you have, but that's a good thing. And you got to try to, we all want to get that. So several team members, I said, have been here many, many years. It's a good place to work. So people stay here and continue to work here. And that takes work, though. That doesn't just happen. But we can't do anything without all these people here in these pictures. So that's, I want that to be my take-home message. Technology is great and cool, but none of it works if you don't have the right people behind it.
Yeah, I appreciate that as well, Walt. Another thing you talked about, Clare, is that he's very innovative. He likes trying new things, and a lot of them have worked, right? And so would you mind talk a little bit about some of the things that Clare's done that we're going to talk about in the webinar that worked for him?
Yeah, one of them is a brand new technology, the AfiCollar feed efficiency tool that is helping him to show income over feed costs and comparing milk production and feed efficiency, and really helping him come up with a better picture of what a profitable cow looks like. I really liked the comment that he made during the webinar where he said, I used to think that a cow that was producing 80 or 90 pounds of milk was a profitable cow. And he said, well, after having access to this tool and technology, I'm kind of rethinking that maybe it's not quite as easy to determine what a profitable cow is just based off of milk production. So that's an interesting discussion. You'll want to go in and hear his comments on that new technology that I think will be an up and comer as a technology that more producers will be using in the future.
Well, the main thing that we've been working on for probably the last year and a half is the Afi feed efficiency collar tool. So all of our cows wear these collars. We updated the parlor 3 years ago. We went from the leg band to the neck band so we could have rumination. And but there's some other things that could do. So we started doing some testing with Afi and doing some looking at the feed, and they can they can track eating time, and they're basically figuring out how much each cow on an individual basis is eating every day. And they have production data because we have the meters. We don't have the lab, but I do feed them back our test day information so we can energy correct the milk and look at this thing based on how much are these cows eating every day and what is she really making us as far as income over feed. It's harder than you think it is to determine which cows are actually profitable cows. I always thought any cow making 80, 90 pounds of milk is a profitable cow. That's not necessarily true. So now I have this feed efficiency tool. I'm looking at this tool. I'm using this to find my less feed efficient cows, my lower end cows that are maybe close to that milk cut line where I would normally just use a number for milk. Let's say it's 55 pounds today. Everybody below that, we're looking at least for culling. But sometimes there's cows that are making quite a bit more milk than that, And so you're not looking at those cows, but those cows are not feed efficient cows, and those will be fat cows. And those cows, it's when you print the list and you go look at those cows, they're pretty obvious that they're not efficient cows, but those cows go unseen otherwise without this tool that I'm using. So what we're doing now is we're finding these cows. We get feed efficiency on the first 60 days in milk, and I can determine whether or not I want replacements out of those cows. And since we're breeding heavily with beef, I already have room in my program to make less replacements. I have a few more than I need. And I also just need to, modify my strategy and just pick the right cows to get replacements out of. Right now, it's more of a blanket strategy where we're just using first, second service. All cows get sex semen. Those are the heifers. Those are my replacements. Everybody else gets beef. This way, I will be able to determine whether or not I cull every single cow that's not efficient. You can't do that. You can't just go cull all your inefficient cows or you won't have enough cows. But I can determine whether or not I want a replacement out of that animal. And over time, we'll be able to breed the efficiency into the herd by using our most feed efficient cattle to make more feed efficient cattle. So that's a long game. It takes a lot of time, just like anything with genetics. But I find the information to be compelling. I do believe it's accurate, and I think you got to start somewhere. So this is my strategy with the feed efficiency technology, and I'm pretty excited about it. But we're really in the beginning, so I'm not in the mode where I can group cows by efficiency or anything like that yet. I'm just basically using it as a tool to find cull cows sooner and just make breeding decisions. So that's where I'm at with the feed efficiency.
Let me ask you if we go back to the feed efficiency, talk a little bit about, are you seeing anything, early signs of correlations between how you have been having your breeding strategy to seeing the cows that maybe are feed efficient, or was that kind of a surprise to see, oh, we didn't imagine that, these type of cows we were breeding were going to be feed efficient?
We have some cows that, like, we have bought some purebred Holstein cows, and we used to be a crossbred herd. I guess I should have disclosed that. In the 2010 era, we went to pro cross. When I arrived here in 2017, we were in the middle of that. I almost immediately turned back to Holstein, but it took me a little while because I wanted to understand things first before I just started pulling levers. But you get these higher big Holstein cows, they'll show up as the least feed efficient cows, but they kind of look like it. And we bought a few show animals for the boys to have fall calves, and those girls are on the top of the list every time for least feed efficient cows. And you go look at them and you can see it. They're big and they probably eat a lot. So it kind of tells you there's other ways to find out and know, probably using 3 points of type and show frame cows to make replacements isn't really the right program, but I think the genetics companies have figured all that kind of stuff out for us. We just got to make sure, we're breeding for the right kind of cow, the cow that works for us. What this tells us is what ones do work. Okay, well, who are they? Well, what do we know about them? We know a lot about them because we track all kinds of things about them and we have all their history. So we can use that to try to somewhat predict, okay, how are we going to get a better replacement? Well, who do we want them out of? That's what this is helping me determine.
Right. As an innovator, the pioneers take the arrows, right? And so not everything has worked, and there's certainly learnings there. Let's talk a little bit about that, Walt.
Yeah, it's always interesting. This is my favorite part of this webinar exchange is being able to talk about some of these things that just haven't worked for producers, because everyone knows that they have them. It's kind of like accidents that happen on the farm. You're driving a tractor into a ditch. Like, it happens to everyone, but we try to maybe not talk about those or hide those a little bit, just because they're not as fun to discuss. But Claire talked a little bit about some of those things that have been like that for him. Talked a little bit about solar panels and what didn't work about that. I kind of likened it actually to a story I heard when I was traveling through South Dakota, and I saw all these windmills that had been put in for power generation. And I asked a producer, I said, wow, there's a lot of windmills here. And he said, yeah, actually, many of them aren't actually running, or if they're spinning, there's no turbine behind them. They're just spinning in the wind because they didn't have a place for the power to go. So, and anyway, he talked a little bit about that, how they wanted to generate some power. And they did do that. They actually generated more power than they needed, and just kind of turned out to be more complicated than what they had thought. You can hear his thoughts on that here in this clip.
We installed a solar array now a year and a half ago, and it was too large for the utility to take power back. And we didn't know this. So when this thing came along, we had some developers come sell this to us, and we were going to make 50 or 100% of our energy 50% of the time, right? And they did all the calculations, and we needed a megawatt of power to do this. Well, nobody checked to see if that was even acceptable, and it turns out that it wasn't. So then we had to install a relay that made it so we couldn't put power back on the grid, and that was going to make this thing never pay for itself. So what we ended up having to do was disconnect 20% of the solar array. It doesn't do anything now. So we could get under the size limit to where we could feed power back to the utility. So it's just been a very complicated thing. And, they came to us and we're like, hey, we can make our power with the sun. That sounds great. Let's do that, right? We were looking to make an investment in something. And we think, the electricity bill over time adds up to a lot of money. So if we could reduce that here on the dairy, and we can, we had a small little section you can see in the picture just on the corner of the dairy. It wasn't super highly productive farmland anyways. And we just have enough panels to make power for ourselves. And we're not trying to create a solar farm or anything like that, but it's just been a lot more difficult than it seems like it needs to be. And part of that's utility. Part of it's, we didn't do our research. Part of it's some of the developer, but these things always sound a whole lot better than they are. And I do not want to make it sound like I'm anti solar power. I think it's cool when they're working, and when we're making power and we're not using anything from the grid, that's great. But it's taken us a lot of headaches to get to this point, and we've learned the hard way through investing money in equipment that doesn't do anything, that you really want to make sure you do your research on all this stuff, and you want to talk to whoever's actually going to take the power and make sure that they're okay with how much you're going to make and how you're going to do it.
Did you make as much power as they claimed you would make?
It can, but it can't be hooked. It can't all be hooked up. So we basically have 550 kWs. That's the limit. So that's what we have plugged in. And in the summer, like this time of the year right now, in the middle of the day, we'll be making with the panels nearly double what we're consuming. So we'll be putting that much back on at that time. But we haven't really seen that in the electrical bills yet. But it wasn't a great winter for sunshine. The last couple months have been much better, and we are starting to see it. But it's been such a long, slow process, and I mean, it's been almost 2 years, and we still haven't seen an electric bill where it's like, oh, there we go. We paid half this month than we paid before. Mm-hmm. So we're still working on that, but there's nothing we can do. They're there. We got to make them work. The plan is to take the part of the array that's not working and connect it to a different service that we have that's on a different part of the dairy, but we're working through that right now. There's a lot of paperwork and different things we have to do with the utility. So it's been frustrating.
So Walt, we've got our second one coming up here in the very near future. It's going to be on Tuesday, August 26th, and that'll be at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Kind of give me an overview of what we can expect to see during that webinar.
Yeah, this one's really exciting. I've already had an interview with the producer to learn a little bit more about their operation. So we'll be featuring Rob Diepersloot. He's a 7th generation dairy farmer. And he and his wife are the founder of WonderCow Nutrition, which is a colostrum-based wellness company. Yeah, WonderCow Nutrition is a company that he and his partners have invested into, and they're riding the wave of consumer interest in human wellness, especially when it comes to natural ingredients and things that bioactives, things that consumers feel like are going to be helpful. And science is coming out showing that it is helpful to consumers to have specific interest in some of these things. So colostrum is the one that'll be the tie-in here with the dairy industry, and how he is promoting colostrum to human consumers. That'll be a really interesting discussion. There'll also be some other points. So he's managing dairies across multiple states. So there's 3 locations, 2 in California and 1 in Colorado. So if you're interested in how a multi-site dairy gets operated, you might be interested in tuning in to hear his thoughts there. And then overall, he operates in the state of California, which, as many know, has some interesting environmental regulations. And in addition to those, going direct to consumer with the product, obviously sustainability is on the forefront of many consumers' minds. So he'll talk about the role of sustainability in managing his dairy and his farm in both aspects of both the dairy farm business as well as the consumer packaged good business. I'm really excited about it. He's great to listen to, and I think there'll be a lot of key learnings for producers who tune in.
All right, Walt, great seeing you as always. And to our audience out there, if you'd like to register for this next webinar, just that'll be on August 26th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Go to balchem.com/real science. We'll also have the links to this past episode with Clare Alderink at Ryzebol Dairy. That one will be out there, as well as future links to past episodes. So hope to see you there.